The year is 2020 and nothing is simple.
Having a career in sports is tough when there are no sports in Washington State. It's an unprecedented time in the lives of athletes, coaches, teams, and communities. While the pandemic will pass, the lost fall sports season will have a lasting effect.
This SWX production is brought to you by AmeriCool Heating and Air and Jeremy Brock, your local mortgage expert.
Actually the second pandemic that we've been through. We were established in 1905, and obviously the Spanish flu 1918 hit, but we couldn't find minutes back then how to handle the pandemic. So we're rewriting the playbook.
We always held out hope. It was mid-March when this all hit, and you think at that time, you're like, okay, this can't go on until August. We're going to be okay. We're going to be able to play. And as time kind of kept going along and things weren't getting any better, we just came to the realization that's a real possibility. And that's hard for coaches, for kids, for community, because you don't know. That's the thing. We always planned on that third Wednesday in August, man. We're rolling. That's what day we're starting football.
I want to guarantee them they're going to play in a game, but I can't. I can't guarantee anything right now. Nobody knows what the next 3 months is going to hold.
So if you don't think, athletics are important, ask the parents and families that have moved their kids for all these opportunities. And it would be the same if it was anything that, kids are working hard at. And it could be band, cheerleading, whatever. All those are gone. And I think that those associations and relationships are very important. And I think we as human beings need associations with others, and I think the kids especially.
We understand how incredibly important education-based athletic and activities are. There's a lot of research out there on our website, the NFHS website. Recently, the University of Wisconsin has come out with a study that they did based on the spring experience of students missing out on the opportunity to participate. So we have been working diligently to try to find a way.
Boy, I put myself in their position and I'd have a tough time. My life was pretty emotionally based in athletics in my high school days, and so if somebody took that away that I had no control over, that would be difficult. And I think that's what they're coming from. And so I can't say that I've seen any direct effect. I think that kids and adults internalize things more than they would say.
It's a real serious issue in that I can think of so many kids over the years in my almost 40 years of covering sports that if they didn't have a sport to compete in, I'm not sure they would have made it through high school.
It's so built into them, and it was all taken away at once, out of nowhere, and pretty much, and it's been tough for some of them. We put out surveys to our kids, and we've had them really respond, or put out surveys where forced them to respond, and really tell us a lot about what they're going through and what they feel right now. And the bottom line is our kids are struggling.
On our mental health, because we're just cooped inside of our house for 6 months now, and it's just terrible. Some kids are making the best out of it and working out, getting in shape, and then there's other kids that are just sitting there playing video games, just because it's not their fault. It's just they have no motivation, and there's nothing they can do something about it, but it's hard.
Mike Neidholder Richland told me one time, the football coach for the Bombers, that's last spring. He goes, I'm really concerned about this distance, online training, because we can't be around them. There's a number of kids that need a kick in the butt, or to be pushed by a coach in order to do something. And the kids that need to be pushed, they need those coaches right there. And so those coaches also feel like they're protecting those kids, from other bad elements.
There are just some homes that aren't healthy for children to be a part of, and that's where you really hope that we can come in as a community and be proactive in helping and saving those kids.
There are a number of kids that athletics and activities are their escape from reality. And so what may be happening at home in the community or wherever is stressful enough. And that opportunity for them to show up and go to practice or go to a band competition or what have you is their opportunity to be a kid for about 3 hours a day and just let everything else in the world leave. And for that amount of time, you can be with people that have your back at all times, and you're all fighting for the same goals, and those are absolutely huge. And that really is what athletics and activities are all about.
Welcome to Southeastern Washington. Farmland, wine country, rich history, and a booming small-town sports community.
I would say that the sports community in Southeastern Washington is very passionate about athletics and activities.
I think it's Eastern Washington in general. When you look at the number of high-level NFL jobs right now, whether it's the actual quarterback or who the quarterbacks have been, or offensive coordinators, head coaches in the NFL, how many came from that little sliver of Eastern Washington? It's pretty impressive if you ask me. I mean, when you get into it and you have the Bledsoes, and then you have the Scott Linehans, you have the Kellen Moores, you have the Cooper Kupps, you have people like that, and even Cooper's dad, Craig, playing for a while in the NFL. I mean, this is a real small sliver of population relative to the overall country. I do think that sometimes it gets overlooked because it's somewhat hard to get to. I mein, Yakima's going to be 3 flights from anywhere. Tri-Cities is a little bit more accessible, as is Spokane, but there's a lot of good, talented kids in Eastern Washington, in the Big Nine, in the Tri-Cities area that can play.
There's a lot of community pride, and I think in small communities, I think a lot of things revolve around the schools.
And a lot of the people have been born and raised in those smaller communities, and they know the history. They know the rivalries. They know what happened, when their big brothers played 10 years ago. And I think there's a lot of continuity with families being around and understanding what it was like before, the glory years, the lean years, and just the amount of pride I think all the communities hold in their sports.
You always get the phrase, once a brave, always a brave, or once a son, always a son, or once a lion, always a lion. And that holds absolutely true. And their identity is tied to those athletic programs in many instances.
When you compare it to bigger cities like a Seattle or a Spokane or a Portland, there's just so many other options on a Friday night or a Saturday night. Whereas, there may not be as many options around here for entertainment. And, kids just love their high schools.
Especially like rival games, like us against Kamaica and us against Pasco. Our student sections are crazy.
I think we have the best student section in the entire Big Nine. Yeah, we have the best student section.
Kamaikan football is amazing. My sister went to Kamaikan a few years back, and so I've always been like going to the games, and it's always just been fun and exciting, and the fans are unreal, and it's just the student section. I feel like we have the best student section in the area around here.
No, I'm not sure if it's just because there's not much else to do around here, so it's like, oh yeah, football game, because that's where everyone gathers.
Yeah, there's not a lot, so sports is the only thing we have here, so sports and work, you got to choose, so that's why most people choose sports.
I think around here, kind of the Valley is a big sports area because, that's just what kids like to do is play sports, and it kind of brings communities together, being able to go watch kids play and just watch everybody compete against each other.
Being out here on Friday night, there's no feeling that compares to that.
How does it feel to be champs?
It feels good to repeat, too.
Last year feels good.
We are creatures of habit. With sports being a cornerstone in the lives of kids, families, and communities, the effects of the fall, loss to the pandemic, will be seen, but mainly felt, as other states around continue on seemingly normal.
It's a beautiful night in Coeur d'Alene, not too smoky, not too hot. It's going to be a great night for football. We'll have the game's opening kickoff and your starting lineups coming up here on SWX.
It's weird. I mean, because this time usually back to school, football's back. I don't know, just the fall time, birthdays coming up. It's just like, it's weird because it's like, it's not normal. I'm not used to it. I mean, I've been doing it for like 3 years now, and like, I'm used to like this time I'm playing football.
Yeah, I want to be out there. All my friends, teammates want to be out there. So I kind of just feel like disappointed a little bit just because, and then we'll see like the memories will come up from like a year ago today, and it'll be like us in the locker room getting ready for the game. And it just sucks a little bit.
And so we're just sitting there thinking, man, why can't we play? And we know it's hard and whatever, but there's, some towns that are playing, probably not from around here, but other states that are allowing kids to play. So it's hard watching them play, but we're just trying to keep our spirits up about pushing to spring and get that season.
It sucks, but like, as long as we get to play, I'm happy, like, if we do, but if we don't, I'm gonna be pretty bummed out about it.
Messed with me a little bit knowing that I might have already played my last game as a junior, especially since I'm going on a mission. That might be the case, but you just got to stay positive through it and just the attitude that there's going to be a season.
I started crying, to be honest, because I was like, this COVID's just going to ruin everything.
15 or 14 states that have canceled or postponed football. And when you shot this map, it's like, there's a lot of people playing football, a lot of states. I mean, you kind of got this picture in your mind, like the whole country shut down. There's nobody playing football. So having the ability to be a part of those 35 states, if that number is 100% accurate, I don't know, but there's a lot of football being played this fall. And so that's a great advantage for those 35 states.
The coaches will be able to look at them instead of us. So that's just, I don't know, that's just kind of how the way it's going to go. But they're going to get more exposure just because they're one of the few states in this area that are going to be playing. So
the kids that are playing football in the other states right now have a definite advantage because not only are they playing and banking reps, they're getting film of it. I've already seen film from Idaho from last week from the high school games that went on a week ago.
Because the sooner you get the film to the coaches, it's better, so they have more time to evaluate you and just look at how you play.
With fall sports not happening, it puts pressure on a lot of athletes that are looking forward to going to the next level. You have juniors that are looking for offers that are going to be going into their senior year and not be able to have those game film from their senior year to use as far as sending out to coaches and recruits and stuff. All that stuff's going to take place after National Signing Day.
You are what you put on film. If you're a good player, it's on film. If you're a good teammate, it's on film, And without that, I think these seniors are definitely missing something.
The states that have deemed it unsafe or unhealthy to play, we were well along into our 2021 class. The 2022 class that played as sophomores and might potentially miss an entire season. I think the 2022s are probably the ones that are going to have the most ramifications. Elite 2022, so guys that played as a sophomore, the national guys or the guys that maybe were held back academically. So they're a year older than maybe some of their counterparts, and they've maybe gone through that physical maturation already. Those guys can still kind of jump out, but that junior film that, when you're transitioning just as a young man and starting to mature from a sophomore to a junior, that junior tape, we probably make 80% of our evaluations based off of junior tape.
Just because like sophomore year, if you start, that's usually like a big season also, but your junior season's the season right before your senior year, and you're supposed at D1 college, like a D1 quarterback, usually you want to commit like right after your junior year or like junior winter.
It's not going to really matter exactly when that season is. We'll have, if it gets done prior to April 15th, which is when we can start our spring evaluation season, as long as maybe the COVID is deemed acceptable that we can travel again. It's not as big of a deal of when it happens. However, states that have concluded their seasons in January and typically kids are starting to get those offers in that December, January at the conclusion of their junior year. A lot of guys on the West Coast are going to be, Twitter's a great thing, but it's also, it's a tool that you can easily see and reference what else is happening with your peers. So a lot of these guys are going to be seeing, well, I'm going to senior year, and these guys in Ohio or Texas or Florida, they have all these offers, but it's just going to be, the West Coast is just going to be a little bit further behind in the calendar. So I think from a vantage point of a parent, coach, a player, I think it's still going to be frustrating that you're not on the same schedule with your peers.
We're going to, just like with the NCAA changing, it seems like every other day, and policies coming in, and recruiting is going to be a little bit of the same. It's going to change all the time through this whole process. And at some point we'll get it all figured out. And, hopefully if we all stick together that, we'll be sitting here next spring and back onto a normal calendar and a normal clock.
That doesn't change where we're at on the map. We're gonna win games with kids from the West Coast and primarily the state of California. So they might be on a different calendar, but we will not neglect the West Coast. We'll go over the West Coast with a fine-tooth comb like we do every year.
Days where they show all the recruits and the state breakdown. Do you think when that does come out, the demographics will be different than a normal year for you guys?
Absolutely not. Home base is Washington. If we get those kids to come to campus, I feel comfortable recruiting those kids, even though maybe we don't have some senior film. The relationship that we have with those kids is also just as big as anything else that you see on film. Finding out that we're bringing in the right character kid, the right type of student as well to the central campus. So I don't see it changing our demographic at all. I think we will be just as we've always been. Our signing day list will have a lot of Washington kids on it.
A lot of them don't realize that recruiting is still going on. College coaches are still giving offers. Kids are still signing.
We'll have 85 scholarships, and this year coming up we'll probably have more. In the state of Washington, Central's going to have their scholarships, and Wazoo's going to have their scholarships in Washington. So you have some missed opportunities present yourself. However, all these colleges are going to still sign their numbers. Eastern's still going to sign their numbers, and I know they want to sign kids from the state of Washington, and I know a lot of those guys and the staffs up in the Northwest, and the Northwest has really good football, and they're going to exhaust every option. And they maybe after post signing day they might have some scholarships available, and to take into account that for guys that didn't sign, or guys that were the late bloomers, or guys that had really good spring senior seasons.
It has to. It has to. There's simply too many kids in states that are football states that are not playing football in the fall. There's just too many. California being one, obviously the leader. Then you throw in Illinois. Then you throw in the state of Washington. The state of Washington has 4 of the nation's top 20 players. There's good football players in the state that coming out of the state of Washington.
The colleges are aware of that. I don't know what the effects will be, but it can't be good necessarily. But I do know that since we aren't alone in it, it's not just Washington. There's other kids, and most a lot of schools know of these kids. They know of our kids too.
Our business to go find the right players that have the appropriate talent with with the attributes that we're all looking for. And in the Pac-12 we have a lot of resources, but there's a lot of great opportunities out there. From the Big Sky to Division II. I coached at Central Washington University, my very first coaching job, and that was an unbelievable group of kids that love football. And one of them from Montesano, Adam Bighill, is still playing in the CFL. I think he's been the CFL Defensive Player of the Year a few times. So kids come from everywhere, and with the amount of camps that can offer exposure in the 7-on-7 and huddle, the huddle links really changed it about 8-9 years ago, because then you were no longer waiting for VHS tapes. You could evaluate anyone you wanted to in the whole world from your office desk.
The talent pool is what the talent pool is. It's the COVID and everything else not really going to change that. it's going to be more of a challenge to discover kids because you don't have that film. All of their film's online now, so it's at the stroke of a button, and you can discover a lot of kids just sitting at your desk instead of getting out like in the old days. And so I think discovering the talent is really going to come down to being diligent and doing your work and getting those kids to make the commitment to come out, and then finding places where we can go see those kids. It's going to be really difficult for us to see these kids in person and work through those things. And so it's a challenge for sure to get out and find every little kid, because a lot of kids, if they had an average junior season, they make leaps and bounds through the summer and then going into their senior year. And that's the kids that you have to find. You got to go out and discover which juniors that maybe weren't on the junior radar list. We've got to find those diamonds in the rough.
Typically we're a full year ahead of, where I was recruiting when I was at Central Washington, because you're exactly right. It's you're looking for the right player, but you're also looking for the player that's the right fit for you. And typically those Division II players are still high quality players. However, for some reason, injury, maybe playing the wrong position, whatever, there's all sorts of different things you can attribute it to. That's when Division II comes in a little bit later, after some of the Division I prospects, FBS and FCS, have made their choices. So it's for us, it's not going to be as challenging as it would be for a Division II trying to sign the seniors from the 21 class, because if signing day stays put, those guys could be playing their senior season post signing day, which I don't know how you even unwrap that one at Division II level. That's going to be a tough one.
Old school a little bit. You got to get on the phone and you got to get out there and find those kids and talk to them and then get them to campus and then work them out and put them through a series of drills. And then, a little bit like a weatherman, not to take a shot at a weatherman, but some days you're going to be right, some days you're going to be wrong. And I think that's always been the case with recruiting. There's no exact science to recruiting. I think even in a regular year of recruiting where we have all of the film and all of the things that we need to make those predictions, sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. And the teams that go on and win national championships are right a lot more times than they're wrong. And we'll continue to try to approach it that way. But hopefully we'll find the right guys this year.
I think it was, Jamie, I think I did the math. I had somebody do it for me about 3 years ago when I was the defensive coordinator at Louisville, go through, and I believe at that time, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, 27% of all the draft picks came from outside the Power Five. So there's so many stories, there's so many, and I would tend to guess in 6 years from now, when this 21-22 class is being drafted, there's going to be all sorts of different stories on how did this kid end up at this school? How did the big schools miss on him? And there's going to be a lot of great stories.
Football has taught us everything that we need to get through this period in our lives, and all we control is what we control, and all we can do is stay ready. At some point, the governor of Washington and the local authorities of Washington are going to tell us we can play football, and we need to make sure that when that day comes, we're ready to do that.
It's how you deal with it, and I think that's kind of goes back to what we're talking about. Football leaves wonderful opportunities. It presents wonderful opportunities to identify a situation. What are you going to do about changing it? It's easy to complain about it. It's easy to get on Twitter and hashtag something, but the personal accountability that I think we're all striving to teach in football, the personal achievement, the personal growth, the lack of blame, all those different things that I think every youth football coach to pro football coach is trying to instill. Essentially not take no for an answer.
He was not going out of bounds willingly.
Ultimately, I found out there is no playbook on how to handle the pandemic. Each community, each family, each team and player are all handling things differently. It's being felt at every level, and the playbook is still being written.